Hello friendos, it's Bella from the Bookish Badger, and today I'm going to be doing the Spring To It book tag. Now this tag was created by one of my absolute favorites, Serenity Dawn, over at The Story, and I was also tagged by her, and all these questions are spring themed, and this is the tag that relates to the Spring To It videothon, of which Serenity Dawn is one of the hosts. So anyway, I'm going to be doing this tag to get into the spring mood. Without further ado, let's get into the questions. Question number 1, New Beginnings, a book about a fresh start or a journey. Now, I could think of no better book to answer this question than Noggin by John Corey Whaley, because for those of you who don't know, this book is about a kid who dies of cancer, then gets brought back to life 5 years later by cranium reanimation. So you can't really get a fresher start than coming back from the dead. So, hence my choice for this question. Question number 2, Eureka, a book that motivated or inspired you. For that, I'm gonna have to go with one of my faves, of course, I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. Now, this book inspires and motivates me in a couple of ways. One, whenever I read it, it makes me want to do art, like either paint or draw or sculpt or something like that, because those are all things that are heavily featured in this book, and it's just inspiring in the way of seeing the way that characters deal with and go through their loss and their grief, and it's so good. Just 10 of 10, much inspire, very motivation. Question number 3, you like to move it, an activity that helps you spring into action. I have 2 answers for this. One is I like to drink like a glass of water. Sometimes if I'm tired, it helps to like clear my head and wake me up a little. And number 2 is to plug in my music, blast it at its top volume, and just shout along with it and dance around my room. It just helps me wake up and get going. It gets me spastic and waving my arms around. It does good motivational things for me. Question number 4, quid pro quo, a quote that either struck a chord with you or helped you realize something about yourself. There's a Lemony Snicket quote that reads, "It is likely I will die next to a pile of things I was meaning to read." And honestly, just same, because my TBR is so long, and even if I didn't add any more books to it, it's not likely I'd be able to make my way through it by the end of my life, and that makes me very, very sad, so this is entirely relatable to me. Question number 5, reach for the sky, a character that grows. I picked 2 for this question, as I'm realizing now that I picked 2 for a lot of these questions, but I wanted to pick one character that grows in a negative way and one that grows in a positive way. For the negative way, I picked Adelina from the Young Elite series, and Adelina starts off as she's kind of sketchy, but then she definitely turns into a bad guy. At the beginning, she feels sorry for her, so you're like, oh, I can see why she's like this, it's okay, she's had an awful life. But then as the story goes along, you're like, she's evil. So that's why I picked her. She definitely grows to be the negative character, but you're still rooting for her because she's like the anti-hero type, so whatever. But for the second one, the one that grows in a positive way, I picked Kyle from the Beastly book by Alex Finn. Beastly, if you don't know, is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and Kyle is the Beast character, so of course the Beast character is going to be a jerk in the beginning, but the way the author wrote Kyle, he was just super mega beyond jerk. I was like, there's no way he's going to be able to write a believable transition from this guy being this much of a jerk to being someone who you root for. And believe it or not, to my disbelief anyway, he did. The transition was perfectly believable, and by the end of the book, I totally liked Kyle as a character, whereas in the beginning, I was kind of rooting for him to stay a beast forever because I was like, he deserves it. So there are my 2. Question number 6, Busy Bee, a character who is always working on or doing something. For that, this might be kind of an obvious answer, but I'm going to go with Cinder from the Cinder book and the Lunar Chronicles series because she's a mechanic and it's the Cinderella story, so she's always doing stuff for her stepmother, and with being a mechanic, she's always doing mechanic work, so naturally I picked this one. Question number 7, Grow and Grow, a book or series that you wish had more books or a companion novel. Harry Potter is ripe for the picking. I am just really jonesing for like a Marauders prequel or something like The Cursed Child, but you know, actually written by J.K. Rowling, so it's good and it doesn't come off like a fan fiction. And I know that there are things like the textbooks that are technically companion books, like The Quidditch Through the Ages and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, but those don't follow the main storyline and they don't follow any characters we know. I just want more Harry Potter, okay? Please. Question number 8, The More You Know, a book that taught you something. I'm gonna go with A View from the Cheap Seats by Neil Gaiman. This is his non-fiction book. It's various essays and intros and different things like that compiled together into one larger non-fiction work, and it is just so good. The problem is I listened to it on audiobook, so I didn't get to highlight all of the things that I mentally highlighted, but there were so many great tidbits where it's like, yes, I agree with that, or wow, I never thought about it like that. So that book was just so good for all things teaching and teachable, and I want to reread it because just so good. Love me some Neil Gaiman. Question number 9, change is a good thing. Share the links of your most recent and your first video and then talk a little bit about them. So, my first video was a review for I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson, and my most recent video actually was also a review for We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. And I feel like I've grown so much between these two videos. I don't really watch my videos after I post them, but I watched my first video for the purpose of answering this question, and there is a lot of cringe. First of all, the cuts are very bad, not good. There are parts where I clip the beginnings or ends of my words, and then there are giant pauses where I'm like, why didn't you cut that? And then how I came off of my videos was very odd, because when I was watching all the how to booktube videos before I started my booktube channel, they all said be yourself, so I was like great, but then a lot of them also said don't feel like you need to have a bigger personality on camera than you have in real life. People will accept you for who you are. But then that made me feel like, okay, so I naturally have a pretty big and exuberant and loud personality, so I was worried that being myself and having the personality I have and showing that on camera, people would think that I was being fake because I was being so extra when that's just how I actually am. So on one hand, I was trying very hard to be myself, but I had it in my head that people were going to think that I came off as fake, and something about having that in my head made me come off as fake. Like, I was watching the video and it's real stuff that I would do, but it comes off very stilted and weird, and I think it's because I had that mindset in my head. But anyway, in my more recent videos, I've definitely, since the time I've started my channel, have grown so much more comfortable with being on camera, and I haven't had that thing in my head of like, oh, people are going to think you're fake, because it's like, you know what, if somebody thinks that I'm being on fake or being too big on camera, they don't have to watch me. As long as I know that I'm being who I am, then is good. So overall, my comfort level and my planning abilities and my technical editing skills have all just grown, I feel, significantly from when I first started my booktube channel, and I'm sure I've got nowhere to go but up from here, so it's all good things happening. Question number 10, defy the odds. Pick a book that fits into or can be classified as multiple genres. I don't know why, but the only book I could think of for this prompt was The Giver by Lois Lowry, because it's definitely dystopian and it's definitely sci-fi, so it is distinctly two different genres. Of course, I can think of other books that are classified as multiple genres, but usually when a book is classified as multiple genres, it's like subgenres of itself, so it's like, but it's the same thing. So that's the only one where I could think of where it's like distinctly sci-fi, dystopian, two very different genres into one book. Question number 11. I think I can pick 3 books that you really want to read this year. So, really want to read Girl of Fire and Thorns by Rae Carson, because it's one of Maria's favorite books over at Books Magic, and she's my girl. And I really want to read Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, because it's one of his most famous books and I somehow haven't read it yet. And also I got this really beautiful illustrated copy, which is flipping signed. I cannot believe I got a signed book by Neil Gaiman. Scree. And I really want to read Cadaverine Queen by Alyssa Whitney. And finally, question number 12. Pay it forward. Pick 5 people to tag. I would like to tag Q over at Professor Q's College of Books, Maria at Books Magic, Lori Dawson, Kathleen at Worth 1,000 Words, and Nicole at Who Picked This Book. Y'all have been tagged, and I would really love to see your guys' renditions of this and your answers to these questions. Alright, that is pretty much it for this tag. I would love to hear if you guys have read any of these books I talked about, or if you want to read them, or if you disagree with my answers, or if you agree with them. Any of it, all of it, please leave it in a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, do not hesitate to give it a thumbs up. Do not hesitate to subscribe for more content coming soon, and I will see you in the next video. Bookish Badger, signing off.